I really like emulation, but I wouldn't say I always love it. And one of the biggest problems with that has always been some of my favorite handhelds of all time are the DS and the 3DS. And most devices, including a PC, just don't really emulate DS and 3DS games just very well at all. But a while back I was just onslaught with a ton of videos and things in my feed talking about the AYN or AYN Thor, with its defining feature being that it has two screens. And that's mainly what caught my attention, and the fact that it's also a relatively powerful device. So after getting influenced myself, I decided it was my time to go buy one. And I just kind of wanted to talk about my experience over the past month or two of having an AYN Thor, and just what I've thought about it, especially as a mega 2DS and 3DS fan, how the emulation experience is, as well as what other things this device offers, and whether maybe it's something that you might be interested in as well. So with that being said, enjoy the rest of the video, and if you do enjoy it or you're convinced to go buy one of these just like I was influenced to, then let me know down below. So right off the bat, I wanted to mention I haven't always been the target demographic for emulation devices. Mostly because I'm a little bit cheap and don't want to buy them if I don't think I'm going to use them. But that does make the ones that kind of really stand out really special in my opinion. And it's already pretty obvious that the AYN Thor is pretty special with its two screens. I think I've seen a couple others, but this one definitely stands out to me. Also because the screens are absolutely beautiful for really playing any type of game on this device. This device has two OLED screens, with the top one being like 120 Hz and the bottom being 60 Hz, which for the most part there's not too many things that you'd probably play that really are pushing that you need 120 Hz on this thing. The other thing that really stands out to me, especially after using this thing for like a month or two, is the battery life. You kind of expect with a device like this that has two great screens on it to just absolutely destroy battery life, and that can be true on the more demanding game. I'm not saying this game can play the latest Doom game and last you like 15 hours or something like that. It's not that kind of device. But if you are emulating kind of simpler things or playing indie games, this thing will last a surprisingly long time. It has a 6,000 milliamp hour battery, which if you don't really know how to quantify that kind of battery life by just the spec, I can tell you that I went on a 4-day trip with like a 7-hour car drive, and during that entire trip I brought this thing to play along with me. And I basically didn't have to charge this thing a single time during that entire trip. And I was actively playing this. Not every second of the trip, of course, but it was the main device that I brought to play when I wanted to play a little bit of video games like before bed or something. But then the other amazing thing about this device having two screens is that if you are not playing a DS or 3DS emulation or something, then you can use the second screen as kind of a backup screen for really whatever you'd want to put on it. Since this is an Android device, there's a whole host of apps that you can honestly use it. You can use it as a web browser. You could load up some YouTube on this thing. You could have walkthroughs on the second screen if you're that kind of person. You could put the calendar on the second screen if you're really that worried about being on time for things. It also has this handy AYN button, which is kind of like a home button on like a 3DS or something, but it pulls up a host of kind of easy settings that you can tweak while you're gaming. And here you can change things like the fan mode, the performance mode, whether or not you want to clean the memory of the system, vibration being on or off. You can turn on and off the LEDs and the joysticks. It also even has a frame counter for the top screen, as well as tracking a bunch of temperatures and all that kind of jazz the Steam tweakers might be interested in. Before we get too far into like the emulation side, another cool thing about this thing besides just emulating old consoles is that because it's an Android device, you can play Android games natively on this thing. And it's been honestly a long time since I've played Android games or phone games really that, you know, the really expansive ones that are basically just whole open world RPGs at this point. I did put Wuthering Waves or WUWA on here. I know it's got a pretty intense fan base and some people would swear by this game being one of the best things of all time. I only played a little bit and it seems like a fun game and it runs pretty well on this device, at least as well as you'd expect. And the better thing about it is that it has a controller built into it, so you don't have to have like some weird appendage attached to your phone. And I think the thermals are also just a lot better on this than your phone. Your phone can get pretty hot when you're playing some of those high intense Android or phone games or whatever. But for a device like this, I think the fans actually cool it down pretty well. It also can play Steam games on here through Game Native, which I have found to be a bit hit or miss. There are a couple Steam games, like a lot of the simpler indie games, that run perfectly on here. Things like UFO 50, Animal Well, Ball X Pit. I even tried playing the Steam version of Final Fantasy VII on here for a bit. Plays it really well as well. I'm not well, but I have also found into a few buggy things that didn't work. I tried to play Graveyard Keeper because they were giving it out for free a while back. but it just didn't load on this device. I don't know why. I messed around with it a bit, but I wasn't really dedicated enough to figure out what the heck was wrong with this thing. And I also did try for a little bit to play Persona 3 Reload on here, but that thing was, I honestly think, a little bit too intensive for this. It definitely was like somewhat playable, but it's really struggled to keep 30 frames a second, which is kind of my baseline for a lot of games these days. But then finally is the front end for emulation that you can put on this device. You can just run it and raw dog it and just kind of select your emulators like you would on an Android device. But you can also use a YouTube tutorial or an online tutorial to put a front end on this device to kind of organize all your emulators and games that you might have on the system. And I watched Cocoon after watching this giant video on how to set it all up. I highly recommend you go watch this if you want to set it up, because I'm not going to go explain how you do it all, because frankly I'd just probably be copywriting this video about how to set it all up, so I'm not going to do that. And here I'm able to put DS games, 3DS games, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Genesis, and SNES, NES I'm sure, PlayStation 1, and even GameCube. And that's about where I kind of stopped. I know it could probably play a bit more, probably, you know, like PlayStation 2 and things, but there is definitely a limit I found to how well it even works. I definitely think that this thing was really spec'd out for trying to play 3DS games really well, at least the majority of the library, if anything. So if anything is more powerful than the most intensive 3DS game, I don't really think it's going to handle it quite as well, or then you're definitely going to see the battery life drain a lot faster. But I think this device is really good for kind of catching up on your backlog of games you might not have played from the DS and 3DS. I played things like Elite Beat Agents, which is just really not going to work too well if you try playing on a PC emulator or something, or even a Steam Deck. I have also wanted to always try out Trauma Center, Under the Knife. Again, something that's probably not going to play quite as well on a PC and would play much better in the original format. And then of course on the 3DS side, I mean, it's going to play all your things like your, you know, the Zeldas and Pokemon and Fire Emblems that I would obviously want to play on this device. And it really plays all the games that I've tried playing on this thing pretty well. But then you might also be thinking, like, this doofus, I know he has got a 3DS, I know he has a DS, like, why the hell did he buy this thing? Like, what's really that special about it? And that is something that's kind of more of a, I don't know, content creator, part-time content creator, really excited. And that's the fact that honestly, you can just record natively all the gameplay that you want. You could even kind of fix it around to record both screens at the same time. But I'm sure you've seen some gameplay on here, and if you see any gameplay where it's not just me shooting a camera at it, that was entirely captured on this device through just screen recording. And I do think that's just gonna honestly make my life a little bit easier. I know you can record a DS and a 3DS with a modded 3DS, and I was really thinking about that for a long time on if I wanted to get a modded 3DS so that I could just natively record off of it, which would, you know, in theory be great, but honestly, it's kind of expensive, and, you know, so is this device, but at least this device can just kind of, I don't know, it just basically can do everything that I want it to do from screen recording, and I don't have to be tethered to my PC in order to do all that. I know some purists probably wouldn't like that, but frankly for me, it just makes my life a lot easier. And I have played, I feel, a lot more older retro games using this device than I have in the past couple months, because I have teetered away from my Steam Deck a little bit when it comes to emulation and been playing much more kind of native Steam games on there rather than emulating things. Plus, one final awesome thing before I get into some of the downsides about this thing is that it's a clamshell design, so you can close it and it just fully goes to sleep, which is not true about a lot of other emulation devices. A lot of other emulation and weird other devices that I've played, you know, sometimes they don't always go to sleep really well, or even just like the old Nintendo systems like Game Boy Advance and things, you can't really put it to sleep. I also do heavily recommend that you buy yourself a stylus, because that will make setting this thing up way easier. And I got this one personally. But in my opinion, there are a couple things this device is probably not really great for. If you don't really like DS and 3DS games, then you're definitely going to find more value probably just going out and buying a Steam Deck. Or if you want more intensive like native PC or Steam gaming, then you probably also want to go get something like a Steam Deck or one of those other fancier devices. This thing does start at like $260 for the light model, but you can also scale up your specs to $580 as well. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that's cheap. It's not really that cheap. But at the same time, I mean, these days I feel like you can't even actually buy a nice condition 3DS to play DS and 3DS games for that lower end price tag. So frankly, you're just gonna have to make your own decision on what the hell you want to do with your own goddamn money. And another thing that I probably should mention is that if you're not really like good at setting up these kind of devices, or you want something that just works perfectly straight out of the box, then this device is definitely not for you. I'm pretty used to setting up up devices. I'm kind of a gadget goblin, and I love doing these kind of things. I'm one of those people that like setting up and hacking things almost more than playing games on them. So if you don't like doing that, you're gonna hate this fucking thing. But even for me, this was the first time I've actually ever set up an Android emulation handheld device, and I was still able to get through it. And I think the final thing is that, you know, it's a pretty sturdy looking device, but it is definitely still very plasticky, which I actually like it. I like the matte plastic kind of design of something like this. It's not as much of a fingerprint magnet as some of the more glossy things like the original 3DS.
Remember kids, don't kill someone with your 3DS because it is an absolute fingerprint magnet.
But at the same time, you know, I still get kind of that impression that it's, you know, a little bit cheaper. It's a little bit solid, but, you know, but I guess it's also not too far off from something like a Steam Deck. But yeah, that's really it. I just wanted to talk about this thing. It's been my new fixation for now until I move on to something else. And I really just wanted to talk about it because I think it is a cool device. It's the first Android or emulation handheld in a while that's really caught my eye since the Steam Deck came out. And like I said, I think I'm gonna get a lot of usage out of it, especially for this channel. So that being said, hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in my next video.